Most people today are slowly becoming useless, not because they are stupid, not because they lack talent, but because their brain has quietly lost one critical ability, the ability to enjoy learning. Look at what your day actually looks like. You wake up, you check your phone, you scroll through short videos, messages, notifications, random information. Your brain jumps from one stimulus to another every few seconds, and by the time you finally try to focus on something meaningful, your mind already feels tired, restless, distracted. Learning feels heavy, effort feels uncomfortable, and slowly, without noticing it, you start avoiding anything that requires patience. But the modern world rewards only one type of person: the person who can keep learning, the person who can adapt, the person who can develop new skills faster than everyone else. And this is where most people fail, not because opportunities are missing, but because they never trained the inner abilities required to grow. When people ask what skills matter most in the 21st century, they usually expect a list like this: learn coding, understand artificial intelligence, study business strategy. But those are not the real foundation. Those are tools, and tools are useless if the mind using them is weak. The real advantage today comes from psychological skills, inner abilities that allow you to grow while everyone else stays stuck. There are 3 of them that matter more than anything else. The first one is the ability to work with people. Many people underestimate this. They think social ability is something you are born with. Either you are charismatic, or you are not. But that belief is completely wrong. Social intelligence is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained. It begins with learning to observe people, not just what they say, but how they behave, how they react, what frustrates them, what motivates them. Every person carries invisible pressures, hidden insecurities, unmet needs. When you learn to notice these things, something powerful happens. You stop reacting to people blindly. Instead, you start understanding them. And understanding people gives you enormous influence. You know how to approach them. You know when to speak and when to listen. You know how to criticize without creating resistance. You know how to cooperate without triggering ego conflicts. Without this skill, even the most talented person eventually hits a wall. You might be brilliant at your job, extremely intelligent, highly productive, but if people find you difficult to work with, your progress will quietly slow down. Doors will close. Opportunities will disappear, and often you won't even know why. Success is rarely destroyed by lack of ability. It is usually destroyed by poor social awareness. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Social intelligence cannot be developed in isolation. You cannot build it by sitting alone with your phone. You cannot train it through social media. It requires real human interaction, conversations, misunderstandings, observations, feedback. You have to spend time around people. You have to notice their reactions, their energy, their tone, and slowly, over time, you start reading people almost instinctively. That is a powerful skill. But the second skill is even more important: the love of learning. Most people treat learning as an obligation, something they have to do, something connected to school, deadlines, pressure. But the most successful individuals experience learning differently. For them, learning is stimulating. It feels like progress, like exploration. They enjoy the process of getting better. Think back to childhood, when you learned a game, or a sport, or some new ability. Every small improvement felt exciting. Every little breakthrough gave you energy. But many adults lose this feeling. Their brain becomes conditioned to seek quick stimulation instead of gradual progress. Scrolling becomes easier than studying. Watching becomes easier than practicing. Entertainment becomes easier than improvement. And slowly the brain forgets how satisfying real growth can be. But the moment you rediscover that feeling, something changes. When you find a subject that genuinely interests you, learning becomes addictive. You start asking questions, you search for information, you experiment, you test ideas. Improvement becomes its own reward. That internal curiosity becomes one of the greatest advantages you can develop. Because while most people stop growing after a certain age, curious people never stop. They continue learning, adapting, expanding, and over time, the gap between them and everyone else becomes enormous. But there is one final ability that determines whether learning actually turns into mastery. Patience. This might be the rarest skill in the modern world, because everything around us now operates at incredible speed. Information appears instantly, messages arrive instantly, entertainment is available instantly. Your brain slowly adapts to this speed, and without noticing it, you begin expecting everything to happen quickly. If a video buffers for 5 seconds, it feels slow. If progress takes months, it feels unbearable. But real skill has never been fast. Mastery is slow, sometimes painfully slow. The early stages of learning are almost always frustrating. You feel awkward, unskilled, clumsy. Your progress feels invisible. And this is exactly where most people quit. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack patience. Patience means accepting that improvement happens gradually, sometimes so gradually that you barely notice it. But if you continue practicing, something strange begins to happen. Tiny improvements accumulate. Your brain starts recognizing patterns. Tasks that once felt impossible begin to feel natural. What once required effort becomes automatic, and eventually, the skill becomes part of your identity. But patience requires another ability that modern people avoid: the ability to tolerate boredom. Boredom is not a malfunction. It is a training ground for focus. When you stay with something long enough, even when it feels repetitive, your mind begins sharpening. You start noticing details, subtle changes, small improvements. That depth of attention is where real learning happens. But there is another obstacle connected to patience: anxiety. Whenever you begin something meaningful, anxiety appears. Starting a project, building a business, creating something new, the final result feels very far away, sometimes years away, and that distance creates pressure. Your mind starts questioning the process. You begin doubting yourself. You feel the urge to rush, to force results, but rushing destroys quality. The ability to manage anxiety means accepting uncertainty. You stop obsessing about the final outcome. Instead, you focus on the next small step, then the next one, and then the next one. Over time, the anxiety loses power. The process becomes stable, and progress becomes visible. All these abilities connect together: social intelligence, love of learning, patience, tolerance for boredom, control over anxiety. Together they form the foundation for mastery. Because the goal in life is not simply to learn random information. The real goal is to develop a few deep abilities, 2 or 3 meaningful skills, skills that you refine over years. When those abilities become strong, something interesting happens. You begin combining them, and the combination creates originality. One person might combine writing and research, another might combine technology and design, someone else might combine psychology and communication. Where skills intersect, new ideas appear, new businesses, new creative work, new opportunities. And we live in a time where knowledge is more accessible than ever before. Books, courses, online platforms, information is everywhere. But access to information is not the same as mastery. Mastery still requires something most people avoid: patience, curiosity, persistence, and the willingness to stay with the process long enough for real skill to develop. If you build these qualities, something remarkable eventually happens. Your abilities begin separating you from the crowd. Because while information is everywhere, discipline is rare, and patience is even rarer. But the person who combines curiosity with patience and social awareness gains a powerful advantage, an advantage that compounds year after year, and eventually, the results become impossible to ignore.